Hello and I welcome you all to GNF. I'm your host Vikrant. We're covering three topics in this video. First, we understand how the US spent 30 years, 3 decades, building the world's most expensive fortress to keep the bad guys out of Southeast Asia. But now, this whole region is running to Moscow asking for help. We are seeing a very clear pattern here. Second, we have heard a lot about the art of the deal, but today it is time to give a standing ovation to Iran's absolute masterclass in the art of the troll. And in the end, the Russian ghost is back in Brussels. For nervous EU bureaucrats, Russia has once again become the magic word. Let's start. Trump launched this extremely foolish war in Iran thinking it would be a masterstroke for American power. Instead, he has accidentally turned Vladimir Putin and Russia into the caped superhero for the entire Southeast Asian region. While the world watches the chaos unfold, all eyes in Southeast Asia have shifted to Moscow. Nations across the area are rushing to Russia for help because of a massive energy crisis triggered by the Americans and the Israelis. This conflict has seriously disrupted oil and LNG flows through the Hormuz. It is, in particular, a massive crisis, a massive setback for the countries in Southeast Asia. The region gets around 60% of its oil from West Asia. So when that lifeline gets choked, panic sets in fast. And here is the plot twist that has Washington sweating. This energy crisis actually opened the door for these countries to buy Russian crude and products. America basically handed them the invitation to run straight into Putin's arms. Let's break down what is happening country by country because this shift is happening at lightning speed. First up, the Philippines. After 5 long years, they are about to receive their first shipment of Russian crude. A tanker carrying around 750,000 barrels of the ESPO blend is heading straight to Petron's Bataan refinery. It is the biggest in the country. Energy Secretary Sharon Garin of Philippines and the Petron CEO, they have both confirmed it. The government and local players actively approached Russian suppliers for help. Uncle Sam must be feeling pretty awkward right now. Then over in Thailand, officials are in full negotiation mood for Russian crude. Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand, Pipat, and Foreign Minister Sihasak, they both have confirmed that the talks are going on. Russia has already said they are willing to sell crude oil to these countries. Thailand's crude reserves are down to a scary 3 months supply only. They have had to suspend fuel exports and they're bracing for diesel price hikes. It is like their national gas tank is on empty and they are sprinting to the only open pump, which is in Moscow. Then we have Indonesia, which is the biggest country by population. It is not sitting idle either. Energy and Mineral Resources Minister Bahlil publicly confirmed they are in discussions with Russia for oil imports. The goal? Diversify supplies and make sure domestic needs are covered amid rising prices. Smart move when your regular suppliers in West Asia become unreliable. Then there is Vietnam, taking things to the next level. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh made an official visit to Moscow yesterday and walked away with major new energy agreements. These include restarting construction of the Ninh Thuan nuclear power plant with Russia's Rosatom, fresh cooperation on oil and gas exploration and production, plus LNG projects involving Novatek. The deals are all about shoring up fuel reserves and long-term energy security during this crisis. Long-term is the key word here. It means that this cooperation will go on even after this energy crisis ends. And it is not just these 4 countries broader trends show record Russian fuel oil and vacuum gas oil imports flooding into Malaysia and Singapore. There are even ongoing ship to ship transfers happening off Malaysian coasts to cleverly reroute sanctioned Russian cargoes. But here is why this is a catastrophic setback for the United States. It goes way deeper than just a few oil deals. Southeast Asia is the absolute heart of Indo-Pacific region. For decades, the US has viewed this area like the grand prize in the great power game. They have poured enormous resources into demonizing both Russia and China, building alliances, expanding military access, and trying to lock these nations firmly into the American sphere of influence. Think about it, from Obama's famous pivot to Asia to strengthening defense ties with the Philippines through new enhanced defense cooperation agreement, to courting Vietnam and Indonesia, to working with Singapore as a key hub. America has spent tens of years and billions of dollars trying to make sure these countries see Russia as the big bad wolf and China as the rising threat they need protection from. Then we have the Strait of Malacca right in the middle of this region. It is one of the most critical choke points on earth. Just like the Hormuz, over 40% of global trade and huge amounts of energy flow through these waters. Controlling influence here means controlling the economic future of Asia. The US plan has always been to keep Russia and China from gaining a real foothold in this vital zone. Now, because of this energy crisis caused by the Iran war, Southeast Asian nations are growing more and more dependent on Moscow for their lifeblood, which is energy. If this dependence deepens, decades of careful American work could vanish like smoke. It is like the US spent 30 years, 3 decades building the world's most expensive fortress to keep the bad guys out, only for their own actions to create a situation where the bad guys show up as the only ones with food and water during this crisis. Russia has gone from being the villain in this story everyone was warned about to the reliable supplier saving the day. The very countries America wanted as strategic partners against Russia and China are now knocking on Moscow's door with cash in hand. And this is a geopolitical earthquake for America. Trump's foolish war in Iran did not just disrupt oil flows, it might have shattered America's long-term dominance in the Indo-Pacific faster than any rival ever could. Moving on to our second story of the day, we have all heard about The Art of the Deal, right? That magical book where Trump holds high-level talks with world leaders in his dreams and then walks in front of the cameras like he just solved world peace over a Diet Coke. But can we just pause for one glorious second and give a standing ovation to Iran's absolute masterclass in the art of the troll? You picture this. Trump rolls up, chest puffed out like he owns the ocean, and drops the ultimate flex. He gives Iran exactly 48 hours to reopen the Hormuz. 48 hours, like he is some kind of cosmic landlord sending an eviction notice. And Iran, oh, they did not just reply, they went full savage. They slapped Trump's own picture right on the side of a missile and wrote in giant letters, "Help me open Hormuz." Boom! The missile doesn't even need fuel. The sheer second-hand embarrassment is propulsion enough. But wait, it gets better. Trump comes back, swinging with this gem. And I quote, "I will control the Strait of Hormuz along with the new Ayatollah." Watch this.
Will Iran still be able to control the flow of oil?
Be jointly controlled.
By who?
Maybe me. Maybe me.
You want the United States to be in
Me
control
and
of
the
Strait of Hormuz?
Ayatollah, whoever the Ayatollah is.
Iran's embassy saw that and immediately replied with the most perfect clapback in diplomatic history. Look at the picture. The post is pure gold, and the comment section is also on a full on Trump roast festival where people are lining up with popcorn and fire emojis. One guy wrote that Trump just got Hormuzed. And this is not even their first swing. Earlier, an IRGC spokesman looked straight into the camera and told Trump flat out, "Hey Trump, you are fired," delivered with the same energy as their missiles and drones.
باشد. Hey Trump, you are fired. You are familiar with this sentence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The central headquarters of Khatam al-Anbiya.
But Iran was not done. They started dropping video after video like it is a Netflix season. First up, this animated masterpiece titled Lord of the Straits, where they absolutely eviscerate Trump. In the short clip, zooming in on the Hormuz drama, Iranian creators gave their version of events since day one of the war. And let's just say, it makes Trump look less like a deal maker and more like a guy who showed up to a sword fight with a pool noodle. Then the Iran embassy in The Hague drops another banger video straight up mocking Trump, captioned "In memory of the 168 innocent school children of Minab whose lives were taken by the most evil people on earth." It is savage, it is dark, it is dripping with the kind of shade that only comes from knowing exactly where to poke. So what is happening here? Iran is not just trolling for laughs, they are playing 4D chess with Trump's famously fragile ego. They know this man takes personal attacks harder than a toddler who dropped his ice cream. Every missile meme, every clown emoji, every animated diss is designed to get under his skin so deep that he might just do something gloriously foolish in front of the whole world. And that, my friends, is the ultimate trap. You provoke Trump until he trips over his own ego, drags America deeper into this mess, and accidentally creates the biggest division back home. Iran is not fighting with missiles right now. They're fighting with memes, missiles with faces, and videos so spicy they should come with a trigger warning. And frankly, round one goes to the trolls in Tehran. And moving on to our third story, my friends, Brussels and Berlin are acting like that one neighbor who hears a cat knock over a flower pot at night and screams, "Oh, the Russians are here!" That is the mood in Europe right now. The ghost of Russia is back, my friends, not because Russia is hiding under their desk in EU desk with a flashlight and a notepad, but because for nervous EU bureaucrats, Russia has once again become the magic word, the all-purpose excuse, the emergency button, the political mosquito spray. Opposition voice, say Russia. Awkward question, say Russia. Someone refuses to clap on cue for Brussels, obviously Russia. And now look at what is happening. In Hungary, just weeks before the April 12th election, Brussels is in full panic mode after reports that Hungary Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó may have shared details from the closed-door EU meetings with Sergei Lavrov. The European Commission has called the reports greatly concerning. Now pause here for a second. This is where the EU machine starts doing its favorite dance. The moment Hungary refuses to behave like a polite province of Brussels, a polite puppet, the music changes. Every disagreement becomes a Kremlin thriller. Every political fight becomes a Cold War rerun with cheaper actors and worse dialogue. Hungary is enemy of EU. It blocks EU plans on Ukraine and Brussels gets furious. Hungary does not sing from the same hymn sheet. And now trust is broken, eyebrows are raised, emergency statements are issued, and the whole stage is set like some haunted opera where Putin is apparently sitting in the balcony eating popcorn. Now, EU diplomats have said they are more guarded around Hungary officials. I am hearing reports that they must start barring Hungary officials from EU meetings. And that alone tells you a lot. The atmosphere is already poisoned. The verdict is emotionally delivered first, and the procedure comes later. And then comes Germany. Politico's report triggered a fresh wave of drama around AfD party, with diplomats worrying that German AfD lawmakers could access EU files through the parliament system. And our reports say the system contains thousands of confidential EU documents, including records of ambassador-level meetings discussing issues such as Ukraine funding and frozen Russian assets. Now let's be very clear, my friends. I am not a fan of AfD. But this is exactly the point. You don't need to like a party to notice when the establishment is behaving like an over-caffeinated school principal. Access is not the same thing as guilt. Suspicion is not the same thing as proof. Fear is not evidence. But in today's EU political theater, suspicion alone is enough to start building a moral gallows. And that is the real pattern here. The EU elite increasingly behaves like a club that loves democracy only when democracy picks the approved guests. The moment voters start drifting toward people Brussels dislikes, the language changes. No longer debate, no longer democratic contest. Now it becomes foreign influence, hybrid threats, security concerns, and of course, the evergreen classic Russian interference. It is almost funny, almost. Because this trick is getting old now, very old, so old that even the furniture in Brussels knows the script by heart. Step 1, you find a dissenter. Step 2, connect him, her, or it to Russia in some dramatic way. Step 3, act shocked. Step 4, tighten control and call it defending democracy. It is like watching a magician perform the same card trick every weekend and still expecting applause. And Germany, of all places, should know better than to start treating dissenting voices like a security infection. Now, what makes the Hungary angle even more political is the timing. We know the elections are around the corner. Tensions between Orban and Brussels and Orban and Ukraine are already sky high. The EU is angry over Ukraine money, angry over dissent, angry over Hungary refusing to stay in line, angry over everything basically. And right in the middle of that chaos, the Russian narrative lands once again like a brick through the campaign window. And this is the deeper issue. Russia has become less of a country in EU discourse and more of a costume. Brussels puts that costume on every time it wants to turn a political enemy into a security threat. It is lazy, it is cynical, and frankly, it insults the intelligence of voters. And my friends, that is all in this episode of JNF. Thank you once again for watching.